Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this viewer's video choice, I'll be discussing the prospect of fresh elections in Northern Ireland and how they might affect the future direction of Brexit. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and political commentary, then please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, there's a few things to note first in terms of the situation with Northern Ireland. The first is that how Northern Ireland deals with and informs Brexit will have everything to do with whether or not Stormont, the Northern Irish Assembly, can, assemble or reassemble or reopen. At the moment it's been derelict for a few years now. In fact, during the entire Brexit process, really, due to wrangling between the DUP and Sinn Féin. Both parties lost share of the vote in last month's general election. A potential indication that some people are a bit annoyed with the fact that they realise that having Stormont shut is hurting them, and definitely over the next year is really going to hurt them very badly at this crucial time. Still, Sinn Féin did retain the same number of Westminster seats, although it wasn't entirely the same seats. The DUP did lose a couple, though that might have more to do with the Remain alliance that formed in Northern Ireland rather than just that loss of vote share. But essentially, with the seismic win that Boris Johnson enjoyed with the Conservatives, the people of Northern Ireland desperately need Stormont to get back to work. Work has begun on arranging a compromise to allow the Assembly to come out of mothballs, but it did sort of falter a bit with both the British and the Irish governments agreeing that the DUP were to blame for this. So, gone are the days when the Conservative government needed to suck up to them and throw them £1 billion of public money for their backing. Since Boris Johnson threw them under the bus last year, they have no political friends beyond their own reduced voter base. And it is vital that Northern Ireland is able to start managing its devolved affairs extremely quickly. This is because there are two major problems posed by Brexit for Northern Ireland, in addition to the myriad of other problems that would affect the whole of the UK. So, Boris Johnson's withdrawal agreement stipulates that Northern Ireland would remain aligned with the EU in order to allow free travel between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. That's the good part, but it creates certain problems. So, first of all, it's a headache for unionists who will realise that what that means is they're going to remain aligned with the rest of Ireland, but Great Britain are going to diverge. Boris Johnson wants to diverge from all EU rules and regulations. And so within not many years, with Northern Ireland being aligned essentially with the Republic of Ireland and not at all with Great Britain, it would make much more practical sense to simply reunify with the rest of Ireland than remain part of a United Kingdom that has completely different customs arrangements. And those differing customs arrangements also cause headaches for businesses who want to trade with Great Britain. So you've got businesses in Northern Ireland who will either get raw materials across the Irish Sea from, like, say, northwest England or North Wales, or they trade products to these parts of the world, and or even parts of this country, but it'll seem like not part of this country with different customs arrangements. At the moment, that's not a problem because we're all still in the EU, so all free trade. When we diverge customs arrangements from the EU, then those, the businesses that do trade across the Irish Sea will find the baffling situation whereby there will have to be checks when moving goods within the same country, within the United Kingdom. But the problem is, because Boris Johnson is denying that such checks will be needed, there is no response from the government as to what businesses need to do in order to prepare for this. And this has been a problem with Brexit in general. Because the government have persistently denied the realities of it until the last moment, businesses have not been getting the information they need in terms of how to adapt with enough time. And not being given enough time means that small businesses in particular are likely to be in trouble when changes are suddenly thrust upon them. They don't have, like a large business may have departments that are in charge of certain things. Small business, no, it might be just you, it might be you on your own. And things should be mostly fine for now because we've got the transition period, but that transition period is set to end at the end of 2020. And that means that if everything proceeds as Boris Johnson is saying it will, that means that businesses are going to need to know how to cope in terms of transport and administration you know, what forms to fill in to send with their goods and so on, as well as who they can hire. What are going to be the rules on who they can hire? And all of this is unknown at the moment, but I would lay odds that this is something they're not going to be told about until a month or two before the event. And that's because the government can't really release advice on how to cope with a no-deal Brexit until they admit that a no-deal Brexit is going to happen. And they're not going to do this until as late as possible. I mean, maybe they won't. Maybe Boris Johnson will keep extending the transition period, but he said he wouldn't. And these are the sorts of questions that Northern Irish politicians need to be bombarding both the EU Commission and the UK government with. But they need their assembly operational in order to have the spokespeople to do so. Like Northern Irish MPs in Westminster, they can ask questions in Parliament and they can write letters to ministers, to which they will get non-answers. They will get vague responses at best. Stormont ministers can demand meetings with EU and UK officials to get things sorted, to raise their concerns, to explain what their problems is, to say we need the answers to this by this date. And then when that date is reached and they haven't got those answers, then they can blow it up in the media. We needed these things by now. We're not able to do our job as an assembly because we haven't got the information we need from the UK government or the EU Commission. Northern Ireland quite simply needs a coordinated voice to avoid leaving everything to Boris Johnson. Now, do you trust Boris Johnson to allocate resources into making sure the people of Northern Ireland are as well catered for as possible after Brexit? A part of the UK that gives his party 0 MPs and as a result 0 power. I don't think the people of Northern Ireland do either. A couple of days ago I saw a report in the Belfast Telegraph saying that all of the main political parties in Northern Ireland had agreed on the need to make amendments to the withdrawal bill to ensure unfettered access to the Great Britain markets. Now, this they have no power to do in Westminster. They can put forward a motion, and I'm sure it would be backed by the opposition parties, but they are too few in number in order to get this amendment through without the government's approval. They also want the Stormont executive to be consulted on any regulations that would have an impact on Northern Ireland's place in the UK internal market. But for that, there really needs to be a functional Stormont executive. And the situation at the moment, as I say, is if the agreement, the compromise deal that is being blocked by the DUP, as far as I know still now, doesn't get through and doesn't get Stormont working again, then the threat has been that there will have to be fresh elections. Now, we'll have to see who the people of Northern Ireland trust to ensure that Stormont remains open and active at that crucial time, because people on both the Republican and Unionist sides do have alternative options. There are other parties. And if either the elections or the negotiations, it may be that a negotiation does eventually go through and that can bring Stormont back into operation quickly, I would expect to hear an awful lot more noise to come from Northern Ireland to push for real guarantees for Northern Irish businesses, because that's what it needs. The reason why a lot of things have been far, far too quiet on the Northern Irish front is simply because they have not had their voice. You know, they have a devolved assembly. It hasn't been working. And it doesn't matter who you blame for that. I mean, you can ultimately blame the DUP, but basically everyone involved has some responsibility for that. And I think the people of Northern Ireland are really going to need those politicians to put aside differences, no matter how important you may think those differences are, because the most important thing at the moment is getting Stormont working. So anyway, hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, then please click the Patreon link for details as well. And until next time, I'll see you later.